As we enter into 2024, one aspect sadly continues into the new year. Bloody wars. Innocents butchered, many displaced and in trauma. A reminder once of the global news headlines in 2023. Whole families wiped out in the Russia-Ukraine war. Hamas's horrific terror attack on the Israeli music festival, murder and abduction of many women and children. In return, the deadly Israeli strikes leading to a massive loss of life, including and specifically of children, orphaned or dead in Gaza. The war again erupting between Armenia and Azerbaijan. These were just glimpses of the widespread turmoil that had gripped our world last year in 2023. Just so you should know, the list goes on. There was a massacre in December of Christians in Nigeria, the ongoing civil war in Syria for years, and much more. So in a world full of conflicts, it's tough for India not to take a side, not to get engulfed in this war. So 2024 will be very crucial to stay away from the bloodshed, but to take a stand for humanity.
For us, this conflict is really a matter of very, very deep concern. We actually genuinely believe that this is no longer an era of war. From the very beginning, our effort has been to urge a return to dialogue and diplomacy. We say very clearly we are on the side of peace, and we do believe that a very large part of the world thinks similar to us.
Let me take you through the world map, how India would do best to become a leading voice for peace in conflicts that may have nothing to do about us directly, but do concern our allies and our friends. On top remains the Russia-Ukraine war. It will be entering into the third year. It was a difficult path to walk on for India because both Russia and Ukraine are India's friends historically and have immense cultural interactions till today. It was the Western nations, remember, specifically the United States of America, that fully supported Ukraine, visited Volodymyr Zelensky. But there was soon a Ukraine fatigue that started to set in for them. Some lawmakers were now hesitant to continue to provide more aid. They were questioning the sustainability of Zelensky-led war effort. Most countries, even in Europe, did side with Ukraine, isolating Russia. Russia, meanwhile, showed who has the edge with military power, ignoring any sanction threat from the West. India had clearly faced and felt the pressure to decide a side, but it stood ground throughout 2023. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, remember, had said, "Today's era is not for war." It was a quote that got widely circulated, including by the United Nations. For India to continue with this path will be the biggest challenge.
आज का युग युद्ध का है नहीं, और हमने फोन पर भी कई बार आपसे इस विषय में बात की है कि डेमोक्रेसी और डिप्लोमेसी और डायलॉग, ये सारी बातें ऐसी हैं कि जो दुनिया को एक स्पर्श करती हैं.
I want to quote from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace that states, "With the world's largest population and aspiration to the great power status, India may be the most important of the world's emerging powers. Its ties to Washington have never looked so strong. The White House has reconciled itself," very important, "to the South Asian giant's long-standing friendly relationship with Russia." In the latest, as External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, who was visiting Moscow, where Russian President Vladimir Putin said, and I quote him here, "Despite all the turmoil happening worldwide, the relationship with our true friends in Asia, that is India, has been progressing incrementally." Putin has also invited who he calls his friend, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, to visit Russia soon. This will be India's big test. Therefore, to continue to look at India's domestic interests in 2024, while not appearing to be insensitive to the fatalities in the ongoing war. But there is another reason that India will not completely leave Russia in 2024. Ashley J. Tellis writes here, reflecting on the decision to steer clear of publicly condemning Russia is shaped not by abstract concerns about the integrity of the world order, but by purposeful Indian calculations about how alienating Russia might undermine its own security, driven fundamentally by concerns vis-à-vis China and Pakistan. Both these countries, remember, are very eager to get close to Russia. India will at best want to avoid that. But apart from that, remember, India-Russia-Ukraine relations are time-tested since the Cold War era. USSR has been our ally for the longest time, and not just during the Cold War, but to each time India was forced to go to war with Pakistan. India is vastly different from Russia or from Ukraine, but there are strong cultural bonds. Indian film stars, for example, enjoy immense popularity even today. It was in 1954, way back then, when an Indian film festival was held in the USSR. Movies such as Awara or Do Biga Zameen are still reiterated in these countries for their storyline. Raj Kapoor is still the big favorite. And if you do not know, I must tell you here, Mera Naam Joker, for example, was shot partly in Moscow and included actors from erstwhile USSR. Today, Russia remains our big trade partner, specifically in defense cooperation. India needs to safeguard its domestic interests. It's a luxury USA and Europe may have, India does not. And with Ukraine, there is absolutely no harm that is meant to India, so why should India antagonize Ukraine? In Ukraine, hundreds of Indian students are studying medicine, for example. There are many Indians who are employed in professional spheres. Prime Minister Narendra Modi even caught up, remember, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the summit in Tokyo and did not mince words, telling Zelensky that we are doing everything in our power to combat the crisis in Ukraine and put a halt to the violence. This is crucial for 2024. India is not just a bystander in the Russia-Ukraine war, but is expected to play the peacemaker. Remember, Brazil and Mexico's leaders, for instance, named Prime Minister Narendra Modi as a possible mediator in peace plans. India will have to juggle relationship and put humanity at the forefront this year. As the world watches, India's moves will count, reminding everyone that in this chaotic world, there is room for diplomacy and not to be a part of the war directly. Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict has been long and bloody. Some say it is a century-long tug-of-war over Nagorno-Karabakh, dominated mostly by the Armenian population, but the region officially is a part of Azerbaijan, which is a Muslim-dominated country. In this conflict, India has played a more than usual tilt toward Armenia, and that's for a reason. Armenia has been a diplomatic ally for decades, historic ties, and has always supported India on the Kashmir issue regularly. 3 heads of states of the country have visited India. On the other hand, with Azerbaijan, there has been one catch. While India is friendly with Azerbaijan, even shares historic ties like there is a medieval time Atashgah fire temple in Baku with Devanagari and Gurmukhi wall inscriptions. But in past few years, sadly, Azerbaijan has not really been supportive of India, for example, over Kashmir. Instead, has stood more vocally with the Pakistan narrative. And with the support of Turkey, India has had to confront that pressure that included Azerbaijan. But for the South Caucasus region, Indian foreign policy, you must know, has changed over time. It has never remained specific, unlike with other nations. It depends often on the developing situation on the ground. This belt, as you can see here, is a significant strategic belt. One with regard to oil. India is an oil importing country. This corridor also connects Russia, Iran and Turkey. 2024 will be crucial. How India reacts on this front specifically. For now, India's slant to Armenia is a strategic move, and there is military cooperation too. But India has still been distant in openly taking a side on this war, just like in other raging conflicts. But this is a significant belt with regard to oil. India is an oil importing country. This is also a corridor that connects Russia, Iran and Turkey. India has pitched for a political solution keeping in mind territorial sovereignty and integrity. Finally, the most discussed and debated conflict in the past few months has of course been Israel-Palestine war, or to be specific, the Israel-Hamas war. In the United States Institute of Peace, Daniel Markey writes, and I quote him here, India's official response to the Israel-Hamas war reflects a meaningful and likely durable strategic tilt toward Israel. Yet, India's shift should not be misinterpreted as a broader alignment with the United States or any other camp in this bitter contest. This is a very important comment and observation that's been made. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said, and I quote him here now, "Do not think it is necessary for India to join any axis. India is entitled to make its own choices, which will be a balance of its values and interests." This clearly was reflective as much for the Middle East. So a quick recap for you. Prime Minister Modi had tweeted on 7th October India's solidarity with Israel at this difficult hour and condemning terrorism in all its manifestation. Then the External Affairs Ministry barely 5 days later also reiterated India's long-standing position in support of a two-state solution for Israel and for Palestine. Prime Minister Modi then on 18th October, in the immediate aftermath of the Al-Ahli hospital blast, shared condolences and concern with the Palestinian civilians. India continued to send multiple emergency aid into Gaza in 2023. Then on 13th December, India voted for a ceasefire for Gaza. So look carefully. India may not have taken a direct side on this conflict, but has ensured instead to stand with people and peace without getting involved in this conflict directly. This was not a balancing act. It was a significant view that we will stand with humanity, will stand against terrorism too. Kabir Taneja writes in the ORF, I quote him here, "Countries like India that seek reforms of the UNSC and place themselves in leadership roles to represent the global south will have to balance between prevailing realities and their own realpolitik. These challenges will see an increase in 2024, with 2023 witnessing a total of 183 regional and local conflicts underway, the highest number in the last 3 decades, he says. In each of these conflicts, while I focus on Western nations largely, yes, but remember this, Islamic nations have also played a major role in these conflicts, either with statements or military support, like Qatar, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. India's relationship to deepen economic and diplomatic ties with all these Gulf states, specifically the United Arab Emirates and even Saudi Arabia, will be the highlight in 2024. India has earlier visibly been close to Iran and Egypt, specifically historically, but is clearly building relationship with other nations in the Middle East, and that is why a certain objective view to the conflicts will be needed. Prime Minister Modi stated in an interview recently with the UK-based Financial Times, "The world is interconnected as well as interdependent." As the world grapples with their own enduring conflict, India's role as a peacemaker will become increasingly prominent. From G20 to the BRICS to the Quad Summit, leading that trust will be millions of Indian diaspora who are spread across the world. They will be the force multiplier. This people connect and their contribution across the world will also help decide how India's foreign policy should be and could be in 2024. As I conclude, sometimes in an argument between two friends, it is better you would rather take a step back and calm down the conflict rather than take a side and throw some blows. But if the blows hit you too, then you must also be prepared to defend yourself. Thank you for watching.